Caleb, how are you, man?
So good. I appreciate the opportunity, Ben.
Of course, the I appreciate it even more so, and I think everyone watching this will get a lot because we were just talking before we started recording. But Caleb, I've been a big fan of his for a long time. He's gonna be too modest to give his resume, so I'll give it. He's been working in the content space for an incredibly long time with the who's who of content. So my idol when I first got into social media was Gary Vee. He's worked with him, which if anybody knows anything about Gary Vee, surviving that is definitely a big deal. And then he moved on to, I don't know if this gets any easier, but he started working with Alex Hermosi, which is another very extreme scenario. And now he's recently been blowing up your channel, man. I love the content you put out there. The level of depth and effort that you've put into a craft that I appreciate so much is something that was definitely needed. And I think you really raised the bar for like what people now come to expect for this kind of content, which is great for the consumer, a lot harder for the creator. So with all that out of the way, man, how are you? How's everything going?
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it. It's going well. I mean, it's been crazy. It's weird spending 16 years behind the camera and then the last almost year now in front of it has been really, really interesting and something I'm sure we'll dive into in a little bit. It's been interesting for me to see it from a different perspective. I had a lot of things that I believed behind the camera that I still believe to be 100% true and priorities that I placed that I still prioritize.
Okay.
And there's a couple of things that I have deprioritized or shifted. I tend to think of myself as a naturally very empathetic person. I don't say that to brag or sound like an asshole. It's something I've observed with myself and others. And even with that in mind, I think I've gained a new level of empathy for those who are in front of the camera, or not even necessarily just the in front of the camera part, but putting yourself out there publicly over and over for acceptance and rejection.
So I love that you said the empathy because that's the word that I probably use the most frequently to describe my skill set. And if anyone comes to me asking, how do I get good at this whole social media thing? I say, develop a stronger degree of empathy. And how does one foster that if it's not innate to them?
I love the question. Um, I haven't thought through how to operationalize empathy that much. So I'm just gonna qualify this with I'm a verbal processor. So let's go on the ride here.
Let's do it.
Um, I think most likely the way to increase empathy, I do think that it is something that you can be born with or more apt towards.
Totally. Like
Without
anything.
being a scientist here,
Hmm.
I tend to think that, but I do think that it is a skill that you can learn. And so I think the way that I would go about doing it is um, the way that I've done it actually for the people that I've worked for in the past and any clients that we take on is I look at how they're currently operating and make assumptions off of what they are going to prefer. For example, what I try to do is I historically have noticed that when a character on camera, their face starts getting red and flushed, that usually signals to me that they probably haven't eaten in a while and their blood sugar is low. And so they're going to start getting what I like to refer to as space cadet ish, right? They're going to lose their points. They're going to lose track of what they're saying. Now, not every person that's actually true for. And so, what I'm doing here is I'm actually more describing, I guess, calibrating your empathy. And
Got it.
so, what I would do is I would make an assumption on set and notice that and say, hey, do we need to take a quick break real quick? I got some snacks. I got a Coke regular with sugar in it, like something for you to be able to get that energy back up. Right. And then if they say, yes, that sounds great. Oh, you nailed it. Cool. Now I've tuned in, I've calibrated just a little bit more
Mm,
to be more empathetic and understanding of them.
got it.
I think on a level two, what I would probably be doing is trying to figure out. I mean, this is what empathy is. So I guess it's like taking what it is and operationalizing it, which is looking at everything from the perspective of the other person. So when I lead a media team, instead of just asking somebody to make a 30 revision edit on a YouTube video on a Friday night, I think through understanding what that's going to take. I know that the notes that I left were not only just cuts, but there were changes to the motion graphics. And so what I'm asking for is not a 1 hour long endeavor. It might be a 4 or 5 hour thing that's going to put them up until 1 in the morning. Right. And so I need to be empathetic and understand what all is involved for the other person. When I say things like share your losses, share the vulnerabilities in your journey, what I actually have to do then is sit through what is it like for me to share my biggest losses publicly. Right. And like I've shared losses in my content? Have I shared my biggest ones yet? Probably not, right? And why? Well, because I'm uncomfy with it. And so now I'm building my empathetic muscle. Other than that, I don't know if I really know how you can really train it other than just trying to think through what is involved, what is required on the other end, right? So again, if you're thinking from the perspective of like marketing, if you make a free video on YouTube that is 6 hours and 22 minutes, and then you create your goal is for them to take action. Well, if I'm thinking from an empathetic frame, I'm thinking this is a lot of information to digest. How do I prioritize what things I need to actually take action on immediately? Well, the empathetic approach to this would be to make a workbook that accompanies it for free that gives not every single thing that I say in the entire course, but instead highlights the things that I think that the most people watching it need to prioritize in order of priority and gives them the operation of how to take this thing they're seeing and actually take action on it, right? And if I want it to be something that they're going to value, I probably, some people would argue, need to charge for it. I just like to give it out for free, but I need them to invest something. So they give their email and then they go to their email and then they download it, right? This is the empathetic approach versus just putting something out for the audience. So hopefully that verbose, long winded explanation was useful for somebody.
That was fantastic because as I was going through, I was thinking about how I try to describe empathy to people and how to make it a skill that you can get better at. And I basically say what you said for the most part, which is good. I think that I'm close to the mark. What I typically say is, much like you said, you first have to have hypotheses, whatever, to test and validate them. And so, much like you said, you've noticed a pattern, and I've always been very good at spotting patterns from a very young age. And so, I just kind of took that and applied it to content. And you have to also have the conviction behind your belief to test it, right? Like it's kind of uncomfortable to, if you've never done this before, to make an assumption and then test it. So I think that's very important to get into the habit of that. It's the only way you're going to get feedback to see if you're on the right track. And the other thing that I say is, you know that you've gotten to that higher degree of empathy when you're able to do the thinking for the person. And when you develop this skill, it's not just a superpower in content. It's a universal superpower in all forms of life and business, because I approach every decision that I make trying to think about, much like you said, how do I make this work, right? And so there's usually two or three things that could make it not work, that if you've just spent a bit of time thinking about the other person, the scenario at large, it's pretty easy to like move and dodge that hole in the or pit in the road that only can come from being empathetic. So I think you phrased that really, really well. And you talked about your 6 hour long course. So like how did, like, that's when I saw that length, I had to check 3 times that I saw it correctly. Was that not exhausting to put together? Because that was so scary to me, just the length of time, because I've filmed so much content, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, how many sessions did this take? I wanna know that." And 2, why did you decide to do it all in one go? Because it's awesome, I love it, it's amazing, but, like, having one piece of content, 6 hours is scary.
Yeah, terrifying. It was 14 hours of raw footage too.
Oh my
That's the even
god.
crazier thing. It was 30 hours of studio time. So
Wow.
we booked a studio for 3 days, well, 2.5 days really. Um, and we were there for I think it was let's see here, 12 hours on day one, 12 hours on day two, and then 6 on day three.
Damn.
And we put 100 hours into the pre-production of it. Because I mean, it was probably a 49. I think it was somewhere between 40 and 50 pages for the outline. Um, and so yeah, I mean, it was terrifying. But I had actually had this idea for at least a year prior to making it. I've gotten over the last couple of years a lot of DMs asking my opinions, beliefs on brand and content strategy, and if I had resources out there, and I didn't. I had no resources. And then they would ask me, "Do you have somebody that you could point me to that would be able to share similar things that you trust?" And I'm sure there are people out there that are saying shit that I agree with. I didn't know of them. I don't consume really any content in my space. I try to avoid it as much as possible, unless there's something that's like clearly like I need to watch this. I really try not to let that infiltrate my brain. And so I just didn't have anybody that I could refer them to. And eventually I just got tired of that. So we wanted to put it together. The goal truly was to help people for free. It wasn't some massive like we're going to grow our YouTube channel off of this significantly. We're going to get a bunch of leads. Our email list is going to grow significantly. That was not the actual desired outcome. The desired outcome was to have a free resource that I could just immediately point people to rather than doing what my compulsion is, which is to like send a 4 or 5 minute voice note answering every single person's questions that I can. Because I really like, and people don't have to believe this that don't know me, but I really genuinely want to help. I'm also genuinely disgusted at 95% of personal brands and how they approach things online out there. And so, like, from a consumer perspective, I'd like it to change as well. So we put it together for that reason. Um, that was the goal. I told Trevor, my content director, that I think it was, and I'm going to give you three numbers because I can never remember now which one I said. So it was either 1,000, 5,000, or 10,000 views in the first year on it was the goal. I told
Wow.
him one day, not in the first year, one day, years down the road, I think our YouTube channel could get to 10,000 subscribers because I'm a naturally insecure person. I'm not the kind of guy that just like always thinks super highly of myself. I'm not like naturally confident. I'm the exact opposite of all those things. Um, but then also I knew I was talking about very specific subject matter and I did not realize that it was going to catch on so much. The video right now is somewhere over 550,000 views.
Wow.
We've got over 55,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. When we uploaded that video, we maybe had 1,500, 2,000. When we uploaded that video, we had 0 people on our email list. We now have like 32,000. We've only promoted it on that video and a video we released last month. So like basically almost all of that, I can comfortably say at minimum 27,000 people signed up just from that one email or that one video. We've gotten, I want to say 700 or 800 different companies that have applied to work with us so far. Like it's been wild. And so, Ben, what I would say is a couple of things that I knew going into it, and now I'm going to be and choosing to be in our future content and everything we made so far, way more intentional about, which is I was trying to be very specific for who I was reaching. I was trying to solve problems for my ideal customer. And so, what I know, and I have a leg up than most people on their second YouTube video. I've been meeting with my ideal customer for years now. In 2024 alone, I met with over 1,000 of them, right? Just in 2024. And what that was is I knew how they consume. They don't sit and watch YouTube videos. So I don't need heavy graphics. If anything, that's actually distracting and will make it harder for them to take action on what I share. A lot of them are going to consume a YouTube video like a podcast on 2x speed. So, with that in mind, we wrote the entire course with no visuals in mind. When I walk through a job description, I don't point to something on a board that's next to me. I read the sections that I want to call out loud because I knew that the people that are going to watch it intently and everything, there's people that work with us or apply to work with us that watch the entire thing, to be clear. I'm not making an absolute blanket statement, but for the most part, the people that are actually watching every frame, they're never going to work with us. The people that are going to work with us are too busy to do that.
That's a great point.
And so it's, to your point, empathetic creation, right? It's really trying to think that through. So we were very intentional with how we made it. The reason why we did it as 6 hours rather than 12 30-minute videos or whatever is I also believe that the type of person I'm trying to reach isn't going to hunt down part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be in one spot. And so that actually, contrary to the average Jill and Joe watching, they're like, oh my God, this is super long. How inconvenient. It's actually more convenient for the type of people we're trying to
In one
reach.
place.
The other thing, and then I'll shut up and let you
No, keep going.
do your thing because I feel like I'm just talking like a fire hose here. But um, all my YouTube strategist friends were like, you need to make this multiple videos because I sent it to people and tested it out before we posted it and stuff. And they were all like, dude, break this down into 12, 13 videos. And that probably would have been, in theory, more effective for YouTube growth. But again, my objective was to help people, but also a brand positioning tool. Show me somebody else in my space who is going to talk about personal brand for 6 hours in high detail, provide a 40+ page workbook for free, all of this for free on YouTube. No, there's nobody right now that's doing that, right? What's cool is the majority of people in my space are doing that, but they charge for it. And so I immediately differentiated and separated myself from the pack very quickly more than I would have ever dreamed of it working. But it accomplished the goal way quicker than I could have ever imagined. And it was a brand positioning tool, not a content optimization tool.
Got it. Yeah, and that distinction is quite important. And I will say that through all your content, especially in something like that, your desire to help definitely comes through. So rest assured that
Cool.
everyone who watched it understood that. But I will also say that I love that you did it like that because as someone who's worked in YouTube, my agency primarily focuses on YouTube and has for like the last 6 or 7 years. I found consistently that the way to infiltrate a very, and I'm saying this in air quotes because I don't ever think saturation is a thing if you're willing to do it the right way, but in a saturated niche, the best way to stand out is to do exactly what you did, right? Do what no one else is willing to do. And the fact that you did for free what most pay a ton of money for is just something that is mind-boggling for a lot of people. And obviously the numbers show that. For for me, did you have something to say? Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that uh, I'm getting good at noticing what people's objections are, and just like a good VSL overcomes objections, I try to overcome them in the content or in podcasts.
Okay.
Something that a lot of people freak out about is like, well, what are they going to pay me for then, right?
Mm,
And uh, I'm going to say something that's going to sound like I'm trying to plug an offer that we have. I am not. I am not that guy in any way, shape, or form. Nobody listening should ever take me up on what I'm about to share. Never apply. Okay, cool. Now I can feel better about saying it. So we launched this thing. It's my first time ever doing a group consulting thing, Ralston Reserve, and we have 17 members in it. And we're closing at that. I want it to be really small and test everything out. And of the 17 members, only two of them came in having actually done my brand journey framework. It's an exercise that we run people through in Ralston Reserve. And the reason why I do it is because I know 99% of people that hear me say it on every fucking podcast and every fucking video we do have never actually done it.
for sure.
Right. And so, like, for the person that heard me talk about putting out a 6 hour and 22-minute free course, just know that 99% of people that are going to work with you won't actually take action on what you share in there. And that's a encouraging and wildly discouraging thing at the same time.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy to see firsthand because I've been creating content around the same space, content creation, growing online, growing on social media through content, all that stuff for a very long time. And I would always ask whenever someone came into the agency or worked with me on a one-on-one call, I would always ask, like, where did they come from? And I was always
Yes.
shocked where they came from. And then also what was the primary motivator for them pulling the trigger? And much like you said, so often they hadn't even downloaded the stuff. They hadn't done the exercises. It was, and then I would ask them sometimes, I'm like, you did all, like, you're paying me all this money and you didn't even do the thing. And oftentimes I would hear, because you had the thing, I knew that it was worth it to come and work with you one on one. And I was like, that's so interesting to think about how there's different tiers of how people see value. But I also couldn't bring myself to make a paid course. And so I was one of the earlier people talking about how to grow on social media on YouTube in particular. Like at the time when I was doing it, there was only maybe like 5 of us like total doing it in a serious way. I'm talking like 2015, 20, maybe 2016, 2017. It was like me, Vanessa Lau, Hey Dominic, and a few other people. And I just couldn't bring myself to make a course. I got asked for it, like literally talking thousands of times because I was popping off at that time, and I could not bring myself to make a course because I just couldn't. I don't know why I couldn't charge for something that came really easy to me. Have you ever come across this with people that you work with, and how do you overcome that objection with them?
I want to make sure I'm understanding the question. So, how do
Yeah.
I feel comfortable charging for something that came easy to me?
So how do you get to that place? Because that's something that I struggled with early on, and I know that a lot of people that could sell or pay charge for their information or charge for their offer, whatever it is, they struggle because this was so easy for me, right? Like that's something that I had personally. If that's not something that you dealt with, have you ever had that with someone that you've worked with where they couldn't sell? I guess.
I mean, I definitely have worked with people who had a tough time selling, but not usually for that reason. To be honest, I don't know if I've encountered that specific one. I know for
Okay.
me, I have a bias against sales, and I think a lot of people that have a creative background probably fall into the same camp. So I think
Okay.
for me, what it's been is realizing that um, I think what it's been for me is seeing the proof of the actual results and transformation that people get from working with me,
Hmm.
that I was able to feel confident in charging for things. Um, but I I don't want to answer the question only because I don't think
Totally
that I've
fair.
actually experienced it. Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's a very interesting one.
it was also because I was very young, and I think it was because I was so broke at the time when I was when I was seeing what everyone else was charging for these courses that I was competing with. I just thought of myself and how much that would have put me back financially, and so I limiting belief. I just didn't create a course and I didn't sell anything.
Understood. I mean, if the question is about people not being able to afford what I'm offering, is that kind of a
Sure,
chunk of it?
let's go with that. Like, because it's hard for people to understand that sometimes people paying more for something is actually important to the person who's paying for it, right? Like they
Mm,
actually want to pay a lot because it's associating themselves with a degree of importance. So like, obviously your offer's high ticket, right? So and you've seen it work and you've seen it in action. But was there any sort of imposter syndrome when you first started that, or were you always comfortable because you had seen it work?
understood. No, I feel really confident. I think for me, the variable that I've learned now at doing more volume, because historically, I've been doing this for 16 years, but I was always working on one brand at a time.
Got
And
it.
we've taken on a couple of clients at the same time. And I think the biggest thing is now, and this is what everybody learns in their first year. So this is going to be so relatable for most people. The variable for me is I have always chosen in-house roles with people that are going to take action. So that was never an issue. I feel I feel 99.99999. I'll never be 100% because I think that's a guarantee, and I don't like making guarantees on this, but 99.999% confident in getting people results if they actually do what I
Do
say.
it. Hmm.
But if they don't do it, then and that's what I'm starting to learn is like, okay, that was the freaky part for me. That was the uncontrollable. So now what I've learned, and I've gotten great advice from people, which is like basically in your first year of business, if you notice a problem, don't fix it next year, fix it right away, which is I've gotten a lot better on qualifying compliance and understanding that and whether or not they're going to take action. And so
Got
that's
it.
really what I'm looking for right now. If I feel confident in that, then I feel confident in them getting results.
How does one do that?
By doing really uncomfy interviews with everybody that surrounds the individual
Okay.
and without them around. So, like unrecorded calls with people that have worked with them for a very long time, like, because they'll say things like, I'm super motivated. I've blocked off. The most common thing is, this is priority number one. I've made it my priority. I am the rainmaker for the company. I make content and I bring in leads. And it's like, we had one client that did this and I love them to death, but we just started realizing that that was what they wanted to believe, but not how their calendar was actually showing. And what I realized is if I would have met with somebody who had worked with them for more than 5 years, their EA, and somebody that was either a friend or a family member, if I would have met with those three individuals, I would have immediately learned that this is a cycle that happens every 3 or 4 years. They get really excited about doing this. They say they're going to, but they never actually stick with it. And now I now know because I probably, to be fair, in my first year of doing this as on my own, I probably would have been like, I can fix that. I
Totally.
can figure out the system. And now I just know if I hear anything like that, cool, they're not for me. I will pass them off to somebody else in my network that is better at getting people to comply. That's not like something that, somebody we both really admire, Gary, said years ago. And it's tattooed on my eyelids, which is the inside of my eyelids, to be clear, is I'm not in the business of convincing. And so now if I sniff anything where I'm gonna have to convince the client to take action on what I'm saying, ugh, I
I'm
do not
out.
wanna move forward. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I'm definitely gonna try to steal that because almost all the painful experiences I've ever had within my agency, it's been that. It's been someone who said they're super excited, they're super enthusiastic about this. This is priority number one, and then they just couldn't match it up over a long enough period of time to get the
Yep.
results that they said that they wanted and that they could. For one other thing on this specifically, then I got some other things written down here. But for people who sell an outcome, right? So for me, it was difficult when I started my agency because I mostly help people with YouTube, and I had grown my own personal YouTube channel, but people always think that everything is different, right? Like whenever I would try to get someone on a client, they're like, "Well, you've grown a social media page. How do you know you can grow a page and say like a surgeon or whatever?" Right? How do you express competency in a wide variety of niches within social media? Like, do you feel like the same rules apply across every niche, or do you feel like there should be a completely different approach depending on the client?
Yeah. This is why productizing what I do is very difficult. I
Yes,
believe there's a lot more nuance. So I believe the principles are the same if you're making educational content, and
got
I
it.
assume the principles, no matter what niche you're in, are the same on entertainment. I don't talk about entertainment content. That's not my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Um, I'm purely educational. So the principles are the same, but there's some very nuanced differences in the tactics of how you play out those principles. And so, what I would say is, I feel very confident being able to take them on unless I'm not interested in the niche.
Mm,
That's where for me, and I'm not saying this is a thing that everybody listening and watching can apply for themselves. I think I am a naturally curious person. So I'm going to learn enough to understand what is necessary to help somebody. If I'm not interested though, that to me is like a huge red flag because I'm interested in a lot of things, right? Not like super depth, but like I find women's hair care very interesting. I find makeup and beauty very, very interesting, right? Like when I worked at PureWow, one of Gary's companies, like I loved, like I remember I was making a video about a jade roller. And I was like, what the fuck is a jade? I need to experience one, right? So then I went out and bought one and I was like using it. I put it in the freezer overnight and then I grabbed it and like, oh my goodness, it actually did feel good for my face. I am a naturally curious person, and so that's what I try to lean into. There's the obvious ones that I know super well, and I've cut my teeth on. There's less obvious ones, like something that's kind of interesting right now is one of the people in like one of our clients right now. They are in a space where they are making content and building a skincare, not skincare, it's like skincare and longevity product, right? And it's for women that are like 50 and older. And I know a lot about makeup and hair care products for women in their 30s, 40s, but not really that later demographic. And so when that came through, I understand the principles necessary, but I need to now go learn a little bit more about like what are the pain points that women in their 50s are looking to solve, right? Because I believe if you're making educational content, if you understand what the pain of your ideal customer is, that's all you ever need to make content about is solving those pain points. But like that's the principle. But then how we go about displaying it, right? Like the way that a makeup brand for women in their 20s versus in their 50s is going to display or project themselves in their content is going to be different. So those are kind of the little interesting things that are different. And because I'm curious about it, I'm going to be able to be helpful. But if it was something that I could not give a shit about, I can't come up with something off the top of my head right now, but then I'm not going to move forward with it because I know I'm not going to dive deep enough to be able to actually provide value.
yes, totally. I always use the analogy of like the name in a crowded room effect, where if until you understand the pain point, it's difficult to get them to look. And the analogy is that you can always hear your name in a crowded room. The same is true for content that's well made for a specific audience, is it cuts right through the noise, speaks to them. One thing that I think about so much is with AI coming out and people just spamming out content more than ever. And there are a lot of people who are their whole thing is like volume, 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 volume. For me, as someone who's been in this game for a very long time, I think that it only exaggerates the importance of nuance and empathy in the things that we've discussed. But with that too, I find myself with my employees that I currently have almost more micromanaging than I used to because I'm so of thinking about how much competition there is now, and I used to not really think about that. And so what I'm struggling with is how do you 2 questions, I guess, and so maybe I should spread them out. The first one I'll ask is, how do you develop someone's eye for content? Because that's what I would typically say, because it's all content really is, obviously besides filming it, is a series of micro decisions put together to reach to a final conclusion. But there's a million ways that you could approach the same thing, and it's part of it is taste, but there's also sometimes like an objectively, this is a better way to do it than this. How do you go about teaching people that skill set of like social listening?
Yeah, I try to figure out what the goal is. So, like, are we trying to understand and develop are we trying to calibrate our aesthetic taste? Are we trying to calibrate our, retention? Like, what is our goal? Are we trying to
Yeah.
make content? Like, so I'm trying to figure that out first, right? But if we are making educational content to grow a business, the way that I would teach somebody or train somebody to develop the ability to make that content well is helping them understand what the purpose of all the tools in their tool belt are.
Love
So
that.
let's talk through an editor, for example. The analogy I use for a great editor in the educational content space, just to be clear, this is not for like films and entertainment. Uh, it still applies, but just walk with me here. I believe that an editor is like a tour guide in a museum. I try to avoid tours at all costs, by the way. So this analogy is coming from my childhood when I would, as a family, go through these. But what a good tour guide does is they walk you through the museum, for example, and they will emphasize or breeze past certain exhibits depending on the level of importance, right? Like over here, we have, the thing that happened here. And now here, this is when George Washington first crossed, and we have a visual here of the shoes. Look at the shoes, how they're like falling apart and breaking. Can you imagine walking through the snow with shoes that had holes in them? What are they doing? They're pausing and emphasizing a point that they want you to take away. I believe a great editor's job is not to distract everybody all the way through an edit so that they don't know what they consumed, but they made it to the end. That is what 99% of editors that say, I can make your YouTube content better, that's what their tactic is. They believe that retention is based on distracting the audience from the fact that they're bored. That is a terrible tactic with educational content. That actually decreases the overall objective, because the objective of entertain or educational content is to get people to take action on what you say. That's the whole goal. And so what you should, as the tour guide, emphasize is the things that make it easier for the audience to take action, and you breeze through the things that are not necessary for them to take action on. Okay? So what this means is you don't need a graphic up every 30 seconds. You need a graphic up when something is being communicated that isn't as easy to understand conceptually just with the audio, right? That is why a visual pops up. When you bring text onto the screen, it's not to distract people, it's to emphasize what is being said. So like, for example, and how I train this is what I'm getting into, like with our content. Trevor Odom is my content director. He's a gangster, so good. And he learned in the modern era of editing, right? Which I would articulate as distract people from their boredom. I came up in the world in editing back in the day when I learned from like characters, not directly, I learned from a distance, from like Walter Murch, right? Like the editor of The Godfather, stuff like that, cutting on blinks and all these things. And so what I worked with Trevor on is he was really good at making dope graphics and keeping it feeling engaged. But then we walked through this. And so what I would tell him is I would literally point out on frame, if he put text on screen on something that I said that didn't need to be emphasized, but it looked cool, I would tell him this actually is distracting from the point. Because if everything in a book is highlighted, nothing stands out. If you highlight or emphasize every point, then nothing is actually highlighted or emphasized. So what you need to do is use it as a spotlight, not a bounce light for everything. Okay. And so I would literally walk him through, this is a moment where you're doing this because it's aesthetically cool, or you think that this is going to keep people engaged. But what you do is you actually remove the ability to emphasize the thing that comes right after it. This is the important point that we need them to take action on, right? I believe in the video that we uploaded this last Friday, our October video for this year, there's a quote that I say, and I'm pretty sure that we actually like put text on screen to emphasize it. I think. If I'm wrong, then slap me across the face, everybody. But the quote is, doing and being in action creates momentum, and momentum brings opportunity. And like that's something that I wanted to like hit for everybody watching. Like if you made it to that point in the video, that's the big takeaway. And so that's something that we want to emphasize on screen, because it's something that we want to stick with everybody and for them to take action on. I want people to be doing shit and being in momentum. So that is what I believe the importance is, and how you can think of how you emphasize or do graphics and stuff like that. The way that I calibrate it with somebody is I will literally hop on frame and then get on a Zoom call and say, this is the moment that you emphasized. Here's why it's not the right moment to emphasize. And here's what it ends up doing. It takes away the emphasis from the point that actually matters. And I walk and I explain all of that all the way through so that they don't understand just like, oh, for some reason, Caleb wants the text not here and over here. They understand the why so then they can do that moving forward.
Totally. Yeah, and that does take a lot of time and effort to do it.
So
Have
much.
you found a consistent time period that it takes to make that sink in for people?
I think it's so with a good editor, I've noticed that they should be able to get this down 2 to 3 months in,
Okay,
like, at most.
got it.
I've had editors pick this up in it's ongoing, to be clear,
Of
but
course.
getting to, like, an 8 out of 10, I've seen editors get there in 2 weeks. If I see it going longer than 3 months, which is, like, the longest that I'm willing to stomach it, then it's a bigger conversation of, like, maybe this isn't the right kinda content for the editor, maybe this isn't the right team. How can I help you find another opportunity that makes more sense, right?
Totally.
Where
Yep.
where everybody's winning, right? Um, so yeah, I would say that the biggest thing that I would encourage people on though is a tiny little nugget here that I think is super helpful is instead of bogging down an editor, if you're doing high volume content specifically, instead of bogging them down on all the things that I just noted and saying, make this change on this video, if you're doing high volume, I recommend say, here's what I would like done differently next time. If it doesn't make or break the video, fucking leave it. Like, it's not going to make that big of a difference for the audience. And you get the benefit of the momentum and speed of the editor, the confidence building. And as long as you make sure to do a good job of like checking to make sure that they actually did do that on the next video, that's how I've accelerated editor growth at a rapid rate, unlike any other organization that I was trained in.
Mm. I love that a lot because you could easily go back and forth until you're blue in the face, and then that's going to lead to frustration. And we are talking about little data points, but the game is about tiny little data points, fractions of things, and that compounding over time, which is a massive thing that you can really only appreciate through time under tension. I think it's called the Dunning Kruger effect,
Yep.
where you aren't an expert until you've realized that you don't know anything, and then you climb out of the valley of despair. And it's hard for people to grasp that who haven't lived through it, but I will say that once you do that, especially in content, like if you listen to Caleb speak, there's like when you describe one profession, you're describing being an expert in like 20 different specific skills, right? Like there's copywriting, there's pacing, there's like structuring of a concept, like framing of the concept. There's so many things that go into it. How do you determine who needs to know what, right? Because a small team, you can't hire someone to be an expert at all of these things. It's just not within most people's budget. So how do you prioritize what's worth focusing on in someone's talent? Because chances are they're not going to be able to be good at the list of 20 things that we've mentioned.
Hmm. Like we're talking about developing a young or just a creative, I guess, young
Yeah.
or old,
Yeah. Because
and how do you prioritize what areas to focus on?
exactly. Yeah. Because obviously, in a perfect world, you'd have somebody who understands YouTube packaging in particular. And then you'd have somebody who understands how to nail the hook and how to nail first the concept in general. Like there's so many different skills that are layered on
Yeah,
top of each other
yeah,
that I try to train all these things because I used to have to do this myself, and so I did it for
yeah.
clients, but it is so hard to teach people these things because I have to teach 40 things to teach one.
It comes down to two things, in my opinion: articulating what the needs of the business are and what the needs of the individual are. Okay,
Okay.
so and it needs to be a blend of both, and where you are in your business and team size determines the percentage allocation. Meaning, like right now, I'm in year one of my business. We have one content full time person, right? It's Trevor, and that's it. And so the needs of the business are going to take precedent right now over the needs of the individual.
Mm,
Luckily, I think I do a good job of tying the needs of the individual to the needs of the business because that's how I'm trying to build my business. It's something that allows for everybody who works for me to grow in what they want. But what I do is I figure out what are the biggest things that are most necessary. So when we started this whole thing, we identified YouTube was going to be our most important thing. But Trevor had just spent the last 3 years leading short form, not doing any YouTube. He had edited maybe like 2 YouTube videos, right? So what did we need to focus on and emphasize? YouTube. So we just completely abandoned short form. Like the first like 2 or 3 months, I think we maybe posted like 2 times, 3 times on Instagram because our effort was on YouTube. We had a hypothesis that we would get far more in return from putting an heavy emphasis for the first 1 or 2 quarters on YouTube and ignoring the other two platforms we've identified as priorities, which are Instagram and LinkedIn. But we're like, we'll get to those. One, because we both have a leg up on that. We feel pretty competent in it. Even if we're out of the game on it for ourselves for 6 months, we'll figure it out really quickly. We've been doing this for a long time. YouTube, however, he didn't have as much experience on. So we leaned into that. Right now, within YouTube, what were the things that we needed to focus on? Well, I didn't need him to learn how to outline and write because I'm going to write the content myself. What I need him to figure out is what are concepts and formats that we can test and try. But even that, I'm going to be doing as well. I'm going to be looking into that because, like, in my evenings, that's what I like to do. Um, the next thing that we really needed to figure out is packaging, and I don't think we've cracked it. We've cracked it for how we like to do it. I like to do a little bit more on the nose packaging, not as like, and I respect he's built something quite incredible, but not the Mr. Beast style packaging, right? Like we're trying to do maybe a little bit, we borrow elements from it, but we're trying to be a little bit more on the nose, like clear of what this video is. Um, and so we had to figure that out. The next one was like, okay, you've filmed videos, but have you filmed like a 3 camera shoot for 30 hours? Right? Like, right? And the crazy thing for Trevor is like, he's having to monitor the audio, the 3 cameras, but then also he's monitoring the outline. We have the outline on a 55-inch TV right below the 8 cam, and he's scrolling as I'm talking
That's
for
a
all my bullets.
marathon.
Yeah, it's a million things to focus on. So what was the most important skill for him to learn? How to multitask,
Okay.
right? And so then it was looking at what's the chunked up version of this, the meta skill that is going to be able to apply in all of
Yeah.
these. So hat switching, right? So what do I do throughout the day? At his annoyance, I will know that he's in the middle of something and I will ask him to do something else. I am purposefully, and he's going to find this out a little bit more. I've told him this a little bit, but I haven't gone super in depth with him on this because I'm trying to do it for him and like help him accomplish what I've done in what took me probably 6 or 7 years, and hopefully do it in like one.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm trying to purposely fuck up his day sometimes so that he gets better at this, right? He now is really, really insanely good. He's doing everything I just said on set. Plus, he's paying attention to what I'm saying and going, hey, you said this. I heard you last week on a call give this example. You should share that. It'd be so good.
Wow.
He's doing all of that at once. Whereas in the beginning, it was like, he, what he had to emphasize was like, I'm going to say, Caleb, you did a good job, even though I have no idea what Caleb's saying because I'm focusing on the other things, right?
Yeah,
And we've
yeah.
worked our way towards that. So I think it's partially that, but then it's figuring out what is his long term ambition. So for Trevor, for example, he has the ambition of being able to lead an entire media team. So he needs all of the functions, right?
Yeah.
So what I do is I am tying everything we're doing right now to his long term vision and goal. Whether he wants to do that with me forever, that's my hope, but I don't believe that that's likely. He's too much of a gangster. I just have to make it a really great opportunity as long as I can. But when he goes off on his own, he's going to need to understand all these skills. So instead of every little thing that we do thinking, how can we outsource this immediately? I want to take the very slow and painful approach of he does everything initially. Like for that thing, that group that I mentioned, we developed our own custom GPTs. Instead of hiring somebody, he built them. And he went through the very, 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 very painful process of learning what is the best practices and what are the wrong practices by having to rebuild it completely from scratch after he did the first version, right? Like he's going through that. We will then eventually hire a development team to build our own AI tool because ChatGPT is wildly limited on what they're capable of doing. But I want him to learn that, right? Like YouTube long form editing, the 3 hour and 20-minute video that we released in September, we hired that out to be edited. But that was only after he had already cut the 6 hour course and a 2 hour course on how to lead a media team that we had already put out, plus the other videos that we had done. And so I think like the thing for everybody to understand, and I know we're getting wildly into the weeds right now, but you said we're talking to people that want to be in the weeds, so we're going there. I believe the thing that you need to figure out is what does the individual want, what does the business need, and how can I make sure that I'm always tying what the business needs to opportunities that the individual wants or needs to get closer to where they want to be. And I always try to tie that, right? Like, and empathetically acknowledge, hey, I know this GPT project, for example, is coming in addition to your day job. This means you're going to be working more and
Mhm.
it's going to be harder and you're going to be exhausted in everything because you're learning and executing at the same time, which is exhausting. I understand that. But you've articulated that this is where you want to go. These are skills that you're going to build from this. Obviously, you learn the GPT, but you're also going to learn how to manage doing a day job while learning something new and executing in the evenings, something that I had to do to go to the next level in my career multiple times. Right. And so I'm always tying it to his long term vision.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's something that is difficult to explain. I think you did a really good job of
It was
how
very long winded.
I think it was I think it was great, first of all, but it's hard because that's I would totally agree with that. I think that's a fairly universal experience for people who have gotten off the beaten path and done something that they wanted to do. It always came at the sacrifice of feeling silly, pushing through, being tired, like doing all this stuff and doing 40 things you don't understand. And then randomly you wake up one day and you're telling people how to do it. You're like, holy shit, I know how to do this now. Right. So I think that's fantastic. And you found the 80/20 in terms of like what is actually the skill that applies to the acquisition of all the other skills. I think that's the biggest thing that I pulled away from that. So I appreciate you tremendously for that. On the note of AI, does AI scare you as someone whose business is content? Are you excited by it? Give me your thoughts.
I have my optimistic view, which is I what all the optimists are saying, which is it's going to enhance everything that we do and all that shit. I don't need to say it. We've heard it enough. And then I have my personal pessimistic view, which is I think that characters like myself who do this shit might be fucked. And I don't know how long we have. And so it's why I'm very serious about my personal brand. I believe that for me, I will be in the game during the time where there will still be individuals who are like, I don't care that AI is great. I want to do it with a human, right? Like that happens right now. And that might be my only chance.
If we're fucked though, don't you think everyone's fucked at that point?
Yeah, yeah. I genuinely like I've gone down the rabbit hole of like the whole AI 2027 or whatever that thing was, like
Yep.
all that shit. It scares the fuck out of me. The way that I'm thinking about it right now is like I want to build trust with as many people who are my ideal clients as possible because something that I think that AI is going to have a tougher time doing is building that trust. I do think that that's going to be a little bit harder for the average human to get over the hump on. Um, I mean, we've obviously shown that we trust AI at a super wild level because we all like upload like our fucking like blood levels to ChatGPT and like crazy shit, right? Like we give it like our, you know,
Passwords and everything.
yeah, everything. So like it's gone faster than I expected. But I think that for big decisions, people trust me. People right now are not going to trust, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, for those massive decisions yet. And
Mm.
so my only bet that I have right now with the limited knowledge, and I'm not an expert on this shit at all, but like my move is I'm just trying to build trust so that the people that don't trust AI want to work with me for as long as possible. And then hopefully I've saved up enough money in my piggy bank to survive whatever comes next. But yeah, I truly don't know. I really don't.
No, appreciate the transparency there, and I think that anybody saying anything besides that is kind of full of it. Like one of my clients is he runs like the second or third largest AI podcast on YouTube, and so I've been watching their stuff for 2-ish years, and like we first started working with them, obviously AI wasn't what it is now in terms of relevance, and the tools weren't where they are at now, but the rate of progress is pretty insane, and he's very much a techno optimist, but of course, it's easy to be a techno optimist when you have own companies that are in the techno optimism sphere, right? Like that's,
Yeah.
of course, that's going to be like that. But it's definitely a scary thing to see. I think that for what it is right now, for at least me personally, it definitely has enhanced everything that I'm able to do. It's allowed me to touch a lot more areas of the business that I previously just wasn't able to. How are
Hmm.
you currently using AI in your company?
Yeah. I mean, I have a bunch of different little like chats trained on different operations that I need. So like the very basics, and I don't think we're doing it like super well by any means, but I'm sure this could be automated. But like I take every transcript from a Zoom call with a client and I run it through a script that I have that pulls out all the information that I need. Um, And then what I probably should do is have some sort of automated bank that like goes, I manually copy and paste that into like a client profile and all this shit. So definitely need to improve on that. I think the other big thing that we use it for is I use it more as like a thought partner. So I have a decent amount of long form content now, not volume, but like hours. And what I do is I upload transcripts and I use it to help me on my next video idea. So a video that I'm working on right now is we have like how to build your personal brand, that course and all that stuff. But what I've never done so far is made any content on like how to start your personal brand, like from zero, right? And what I've realized is I don't want to work with people that haven't started their personal brand. I am not a fire starter. I am gasoline on a fire,
Love that.
right? And so knowing that, I want to solve the problem that precedes what I offer. And so the video that we're gonna, I think it'll probably come out in January or something like that. Might even be a series, who knows? But I want to beat that up. So I take all the transcripts from all the videos that I've done so far, and then I give a framework of like, here's, the 5 sections that I'm thinking about. And then I use it. I'll draft initial things and I'll say, what am I missing from what I've said? And then I have all my podcasts, I have all the videos that I've done so far. So I use it more as like an assistant on content creation and beating up concepts. The other thing that I do is I try, and I don't think I've gotten this perfect yet. I'm still in year one, but the content that we put out there, I try to make it both useful and valid, meaning that it's not only useful, but it's valid in many different scenarios. And so the frameworks that I give, I do my best, and I think every year I'll get better, but I try to invalidate them as much as possible. So I use ChatGPT. I'm sure I'll switch to Claude soon or something, but I have it play the role of the skeptic. And I have it just beat up these ideas from every angle, run me through scenarios where this wouldn't work, right? And then I try to get it so that basically everything that I'm sharing is as universal as I can make it without any input from the audience, right? That's the huge problem with content is like it's advice without any inputs. So like dangerous at a certain level, but I try to make it as universally valid, which is why I try to preach more principle based content rather than tactic based. I think tactics people are addicted to and they want more. The problem with tactics is there's so much nuance that goes into how to apply a tactic, but then also the timeliness of it. Oftentimes, I mean, you know this more than most, a tactic that you share today might not be relevant in like 4 weeks.
Yeah, and that's actually how I grew my channel from 0, was that I was the tactics guy on Instagram in particular, and I will say that also led to a very transactional relationship with my audience. Like, they did not give a flying fuck about me. Like, they
Yeah.
just didn't, right? I was the guy
Yep.
who helped them grow their Instagram page, and the second I wasn't talking about that, they're like, "Shut up, Ben." And the craziest thing was that I had grown many Instagram pages, and I did run an Instagram agency, but I was objectively way better at YouTube. And, like, at the current point when I was even talking about Instagram, my agency was now more focusing on YouTube, but people didn't care because they saw me as the Instagram guy. And so that was,
Yeah.
like, a very crazy situation that honestly, the best video I've ever made on YouTube, and I've granted I could have packaged it well. I think I made it too high level, but like literally I explained exactly how to run my entire agency. It was like a 30-40 minute video and it got like no views. And to this day, it's the most valuable piece of advice I've ever put out on the internet. So it's very crazy how people will put you into the corners that you put yourself into and keep you there. And that's what I learned very much the hard way, where people just wanted me to talk about Instagram tips. Besides that, shut up. And so that was pretty crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy how that works. But like that I couldn't agree more. And the other thing that I don't like about tactics, I share them. Don't get me wrong. Like I'll share them, but you if you do this enough, you start to because I believe that branding is just the pairing of two things, right? And good branding is the pairing of or intentional pairing of two relevant things consistently. So if you pair yourself with these tactics over and over and the tactic doesn't work anymore,
Mm,
you
you're
have
the
a really
problem.
interesting brand association, right?
Yeah.
It's and I try to be careful about hammering this because I know and love a lot of these people, but it's the big vulnerability, in my opinion, with all love and respect to everybody who's making their brand around going viral.
Yes.
What happens when you stop going viral? Suddenly, it becomes really hard to like. And so like I think a lot of people, and most of those people, I'm going to go on a quite quick rant here. Most of those people had 2 or 3 videos pop, and then they're like, I am an expert and I'm going to teach this shit. One, you don't know fucking shit about dick. You've been around for very little time and you don't understand the nuance of like preferences changing, algorithms changing, audiences' interests changing. And so you don't know how to play this game on the long term. You know how to have a blip in this current moment. That's dangerous. But two, you build your brand around selling something based off of proof that you don't have as much control as you think you do over. Some people, sure. But even the people that like nail it, their time is coming, in my opinion, right? I've just, because, and you've been in it for a long time too, I've seen it for 17 years now.
Totally.
It is so rare. The creator who was relevant in 2012 on YouTube and is relevant in 2026, very, very rare.
Almost none. Yeah, it does happen, and the allure is obviously there, right? Because it's something that people understand. It's a concept that people see as universally desirable. But you're right. Like that's when people pitch like that, I can usually tell where they are in terms of the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Like 'cause I lived through it. But I'm pretty happy that I didn't try to like sell anything on going viral because that's what almost every other course was at that time, and I just couldn't bring myself
Still
to
is.
do it. Yeah, fair enough. And much like you, I really don't watch content in this space whatsoever because my I mean it's so funny because no one would like my family and friends because I was early on this shit. I get it, but like they wouldn't listen to things that I would say, and then now they send me videos, and I'm like, I said that 6 years ago. Like literally, but it's just the way it's how it goes, and it's very interesting where it is the tactics versus the what's the other word that you said instead of
Principles,
tactics? The
principles.
principles.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but principles are a very nuance laden thing inherently. Like how do you refine a principle to the point where it's ready for delivery?
Well, like I would view a principle that has been taught that I disagree with, which is like all press is good press.
Okay.
That's a principle that's been taught for fucking since I was born. People have
Yes.
been saying that forever, right? Um, that is a principle, not a tactic necessarily, right? Principle, I think, informs how you play out tactics.
Okay.
A principle is something that lasts. It's another word for it is evergreen,
Hmm.
right? A principle should be, in theory, timeless. A
Got it.
tactic, it has a time window to it. Okay,
Cool.
so now, but the thing is not all principles obviously are correct, right? Like
Mhm.
people espouse principles as doctrine that are just heresy, right? Like all press is good press. I mean, I could give you a million examples of how that is
That's
like
not true.
fundamentally not true. And every kind of brand that you could articulate, I could give you an example of how they would show you that it's not true, right? But but principles typically, like the principles that I share in that 6 hour and 22-minute free course on YouTube, they will be applicable unless AI completely changes the way that humans operate. They will be applicable in 10 years. When I share tactics, and you'll notice this if you consume any of my content, a lot of times, not always, but I try to as much as possible. If I'm about to share a tactic, I'll be like, and a tactic that I find useful as of October 27th at 3:04 p.m. Pacific time
Wow.
is blank, because I want to, and this is the burden of being an expert, is you are keenly aware of the fact that you don't want to get locked into this as like this is the end all be all, because you know it's going to change, right? Like I learned this is a really random tangent, but my first big boy job as an editor, I was working at a Bible software company where I would cut really high level educational content on like breaking down the hermeneutics of like the Greek in the Bible and the time and everything. And one thing that I noticed that all of these PhDs would do is they would qualify every one of their statements like I just did, because they don't want to get pigeonholed into like the smarter you are, the less that you want to be absolute,
Attach.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, to Dunning Kruger, right? Like you're talking about, right? And so I think it's an interesting thing, but yeah, I just prefer to preach as much principle based and then share tactics because they're useful and they help people today, but then qualify that I don't know how long this will be effective.
Love that because I was about to say I do think that they play a role, especially if you're going from zero
Definitely.
and you've. I think it's a tool. Would you say? I think that's a great tool that you said to in terms of saying the time, like this works now. In terms of like putting out content, would you say like 90% principle, 10% tactics for someone who does educational content?
I've never thought through I give a lot of like percentage like allocations for different things. I've never thought through principle versus tactic. What I would say off top, um, because I haven't thought of it, I won't say what other people should do. I'll just say what I observe myself doing, which is probably somewhere between 80% and 90% principle. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And one other thing I wanted to ask you selfishly here that I think everyone will also benefit from.
Real quick, I'll qualify on
But
that too. Actually, one
yeah,
one
go for it.
additional qualifier is that's my preference.
Okay.
If I was making videos every week or doing high volume content, I might be more biased towards tactics because I could get that out in a time effective way,
Got it.
right? If it's going to only last for a month and I make videos once a month, yeah, that's kind of a shitty way for me to operate, right?
Totally.
From like an operations perspective. So I think it also you need to know thyself and reverse engineer your cadence, your preferences, and what you're going to be proud of. I would not be proud going around just sharing tactics, but
Mhm.
some people would be way more proud sharing tactics and would feel embarrassed only sharing principles.
Yeah, I think it totally depends on how you wanna be seen, the game you're playing, the length of it, all those different things. It's important to understand the depth of that. For
Yeah.
for your YouTube content in particular, because 'cause I've been out of like, I've been in the YouTube game because 'cause I've been helping all of my because it's a weird when you work in content,
Oh, yes.
you always forget to, like, take care of yourself essentially because you
Hmm.
feel like you've posted 20 pieces of content because my agency has, and so then people are like, "Why don't you post on YouTube anymore, Ben?" And I'm like, "Fuck, I'm tired, man. I'm tired, grandpa." Like,
Yeah.
it's a lot. So, I would, 'cause you've lived the exact same experience, and so I would love to get your inside scoop on how do you approach the topics you choose to cover, and then once you've nailed the topic that you've decided, "'Kay, I'm covering this," do you have a specific process for how you write that script? Because I can get the topic, no problem, but when I sit down to actually write, I have too much to say. It's so hard to condense it into a video.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give a couple of tactics for people to do here.
Good.
And I think these are probably timeless, but I just need more time to be able to call them a principle. But what you should do is two things in tandem or in sequence. First off, I basically all of the ideas, actually every idea, is initiated off of a problem. What a lot of fuckers in this space are doing, and I get really intense about this because it fucking drives me nuts. Let's see if we can get back in focus. There we go. Is their starting point is looking at their competitors, the top dog in their niche, or one of 10 in their niche, and grabbing what's working for everybody else. And to be clear, in the beginning, that's what you have to do. That is what you like, that is the right move. Download their fucking transcript and figure out your version of this. Sure. Um, it makes me want to vomit, but like that's what you
It
got to
works.
do. Just like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I learned photography. I copied Aaron Brimhall and Dylan First styles, and then eventually I started to try and figure out my own version of it. Copied it is a very nice way of saying I barely did what they did, nothing to their level. But then you got to figure out your own. So once you're at the point of doing your own shit, you should start with problems that your ideal customer faces, not what's working for your competitors. Why? Because you're going to look like all of them. And guess
Mhm.
what? Everybody else is doing the same thing. That's why the business creator space is disgusting right now and everyone looks the same. If I were to pull up 30 different YouTube channels on the full, videos uploaded grid, god damn, people would be like, is this all the same channel? They all look very similar, minus the
Yeah,
individual looking different,
totally. Yeah, it's a command
right?
copy paste on all of them.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And what it's doing is it's and people get it misunderstood. I have no problem with going viral. My problem is optimizing for it. This is optimizing for virality, which is for you.
Mm,
I teach optimizing for trust, which is about them. And that is the key distinction. If you start your content making it for you, that comes through at some level. For some people,
completely.
it's very on the nose. Sometimes it's very like subconscious or whatever for the viewer. But that comes through. When you make it for them, you will increase trust with your audience. So you diagnose what are the painful problems that my customers are facing. Ideally, the problems, not only the ones that we solve with our offer, but the best version is the problem that precedes the problem that we solve. Okay, so for an example, real quick, and then please, like, let's stick a fork in it. Help me come back here if I lose my train of thought because I'm going to go down a rabbit hole.
Go
If
crazy.
I, if my offer is, I will do a blood test and find out what hormones and vitamins that you are deficient in, and then create a plan on how you can get those up to a good level. Well, I'm probably not going to get somebody who is sitting on the couch all day ordering Uber Eats 3 meals a day. The problem that we need to solve for that person is we need to get them tracking their meals, eating cleaner, and working out. Because until they do those things, they ain't going to give a fuck about their blood levels, right? I'm talking about me. I am literally speaking. I hired a personal trainer. And then once I started getting the habits down and lost like 30 pounds, then all of a sudden I'm like, yo, let's figure out if I'm deficient in iron and shit, right? Like, are my testosterone levels good or are they low, right? Like, that was not something I even gave a shit about or even thought about as being something that I would care about before I solved this problem. So if I am a business that's offering that service, maybe my free content is talking about that, of course, but also helping people get into shape so then they understand that this is a problem they need to solve. Okay. That's why we're going to be releasing a video probably in January ish on how to start your personal brand. Because once you get started, then you can get to a place where then I can come in and help. Okay.
Got it.
So diagnose those painful problems that they are facing and what is your unique solution to it. Now, don't make up a unique solution that doesn't work, right? But like more than likely, if you are in business and you're, getting results for your clients, you probably have a slightly unique approach to how you do it. Maybe it's fundamentally the same, but there's like some little subtle difference that you do. Cool. That's your problem plus solution. This, in my opinion, is a beautiful gift for your audience. The next thing that we need to do, we've figured out what the gift is. Now we got to wrap that shit. Okay. And so the other task, you made your list of problems and solutions. The other task you're going to do is make a bank of packaging. And all this is Google Docs, Notion, Notes, whatever you use. We use Notion for this right now. And what Trevor and I will do is we will spend, roughly an hour every week. Usually it's actually like a 4-hour session once a month or something like that. But we'll scroll through on burner accounts on YouTube that are not trained to my Harley Davidson preferences on YouTube on my main account. We'll scroll through that and just see, first off, what catches our attention, what's interesting, right? Not even looking at it from a data perspective, not looking at the outliers, just looking at what catches my attention. And then if it catches my attention and it happened to do well for the channel's average, cool, screenshot, add that to the bank. The next thing that we do is we go through 1 of 10, which if you guys are not familiar with 1of10.com, what is this rock that you are living under? But if you're not, go there. It's free. I am not sponsored by them. They're gangsters. They're awesome. It's amazing. What it does is it reports outliers on content performance. So like if on average a channel gets 1,000 views, they upload a video that gets 5,000, that's a 5x multiplier. That indicates that something about this packaging probably resonated with human psychology and got people to click, so you could probably borrow it. What we will do though, Ben, that is different than what most people do, is we don't look in our industry. So if we see shit on 1of10 that's popping up, like you can add your YouTube account and it'll give you ideas for your channel. Fuck that. I don't want to see what people talking about brand and content strategy are saying or doing. I don't want anything to do with that. I want to look at gardening YouTube. I want to look at tech review, video games. Like I want to look at the videos, like the long form camping videos where guys are like literally doing 2-hour long uploads. And there's like shots that are 5 minutes long of them pulling out all the stuff from their truck and unzipping, right? All of these things. I'm watching and borrowing from those worlds, not mine. And we'll screenshot. And I'm looking for ones that make sense immediately, but also just absurd titles that I'm like, there's not a world. Like I hate the manosphere on YouTube. Everyone can have their own opinions. So I respect you if you love it. I don't like it. But a video that popped up on 1of10 that we saw was something to the effect of like, how I attract 10 out of 10 girls every day or whatever. And it caught my attention. I was like, oh, that is a wildly salacious title. Okay, let's screenshot it, Trevor. Let's put it in. I'm sure we'll never use it. And then the other day we were solving a problem for somebody, which is like how to attract their ideal customer. I was like, oh shit, video idea. There's the wrapping paper. how I attract 10 out of 10 clients every week, every month, every day, whatever cadence you want, right? But what we do is we create this massive bank when we don't need an idea, just what catches
Amen.
our attention. And then now that we have both the problem and the bank of packaging, we then look at what gift do we want to give our audience and how do we want to wrap it. So we pick the problem and solution, and then what of these ideas wraps this the best.
Best way. I love that,
And
man. Yep.
that's how we make the ideas. Then we can go into outlining, but I feel like you were going to
Cl-
ask a follow up.
No, no, I was just going to simply say that that's a really important practice. We do it in my agency, not enough. And I do also love the like steal like an artist principle where you can take inspiration from elsewhere. And I actually think, like you said, it's better to pull outside because people are very stale and copy and pasting and over. So love that. Yeah. Now take me through the outlining, scripting, all that stuff.
Yeah. So once we know what this problem is, again, it's the whole goal. We've identified what the problem is. We know what our solution is. We're trying to make it easier for them to take action on that solution because we believe that if they take action on it and get their desired result and outcome, they will trust us more. They will associate us with that outcome that they got. And over time, that increases trust so much that they are more likely to take action on our offers when we put them out
Totally.
there. So we outline with that in mind. So the whole outlining, it's not like how do we keep them around forever? It's like how do we make it easier for them to take action? So what we do is we work on the intro and we will go ham. I'm talking like we'll spend hours just on this. And what we do is we don't have a ton of videos to go off of, but we look every time that we start to draft to see if there's any updates to how the performance of every one of our videos have done so far for the intro, right? We're always trying to go off of the best content and take learnings from the worst content. So our worst intro, what was I saying? Oh man, when I watch it back, I'm like, oh yeah, of course this is our worst intro, right? Like it takes me fucking forever to make it clear on what they're going to get on the other end of this. We take those learnings and we put them into our intro. You've heard, like, I think Alex has talked about this. A lot of people have talked about proof, promise, plan. We have a slightly different approach. One, because my name starts with a C, and so I like to use C's. But we added a fourth. And I don't necessarily believe it needs to come in any particular order. But we have, and let's see if I can remember them all off the top of my head: call out, credibility, compass, core learning. Okay. The call out, who is this for? Right? The credibility, why the fuck am I going to listen to you about this? The compass, where are we going? Right? This is also known as your roadmap, but again, I like C's. And then the core learning. This is the big, interesting one that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. The greatest retention hack in educational content is learning. That is the greatest retention hack. If I, within 30 seconds of clicking on a video, have learned something, I am probably going to lean in and become a passive viewer. Like I'm not thinking about like, you know, looking for the excuse to hit the back button, right? I'm talking about on my TV because TV viewing is up massively, but swiping to another video, whatever. And so we try, when possible, to initiate the core learning within the opening 30 seconds now. That's something that I am really, really big on right now, which is like, how do we get through the bullshit as quick as possible? So a lot of people, they'll share their credibility or their proof as a statement. And I'm getting really hot on what does it look like if you can say it in one statement that also calls things out or sets the compass, cool. But if not, can you do it as a lower third? Or can the credibility, because sometimes the credibility can be in the packaging, right? The call out, another example. The call out could be scripted into your intro, or it could be the packaging. We uploaded a video on Friday. I think it's titled, If You're Struggling as a Creative, Please Watch This. That title is a call out, right? And then my opening line is my credibility. I've been a professional creative for 17 years now, right? And we walk through. And I try to very quickly get into the core learning. So that's the big one. Then we have this, and I do not have this memorized because it's pretty thorough and robust, but we have like an entire framework that I walk through for these videos where we move things around, but we pretty much follow for the long form educational content, to be clear. We follow a very similar flow, which is basically something to the effect of we have different sections, and I believe each section is its own YouTube video. So each section needs its own hook, it needs its own compass, right? Like it needs all of those things. So those four C's in the intro of the video and the intro, ideally, of each section, right? And then within that, basically, what I try to do is, as much as possible, share a point and then a supporting story, maybe a second story, and then an example where it's not a story, but I get to manipulate everything to be the perfect version of taking what I just said and applying it for the audience, right? Then what I try to do is I try to inject, and I know I'm going all over the place. I wish I had the document in front of me right now, but actually,
Can people access it online? Like, is this one of the documents that's on your YouTube channel?
this is not. No, this is
Okay.
one that we reserve just for people that work with us, but
Okay.
which is not a lot of things, but this is one of those things.
Okay.
Let me pull it up so I can give you a high level overview real quick. Do you
Yeah.
mind
Yeah.
if I just
No.
do that real quick?
No. Go for it. And when you're saying all of this, like the one thing that came back to my mind from a note earlier was that this is essentially like systematized empathy because you're thinking about the person the whole time, right? And even all the points that you mentioned, the 4 C's, you're thinking about you're obsessing over the viewer for like, why would they leave? What would be the reason they would leave? How do you alleviate that from happening? Like that's what I'm thinking of the whole time you're saying that. It's basically systematized empathy. I like it a lot.
Yeah. I'm not going to go into detail on what all of these
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
but these are the things that we try to follow. Hook in each section. Hook,
Cool.
context, primary focus, a belief breaker, because a lot of the shit that I'm sharing and anybody in the educational space is sharing is information that in and of itself is not useful if the old beliefs of the viewer are still there,
Great
right?
point.
Like that is super, super important. So, optimizing for trust over virality, people like will nod their head and say like, yeah, but they still have this fundamental belief that they have to go viral, right? And that all views are really important. But when I share a story of a creator who optimized around going viral and their views and subscribers were going through the roof and they were the top person in their category, but at the same time sales were going down, suddenly a belief is broken that like just because views are going up does not mean that money is going up, right? So you have to break the belief. I did explain that one. Then strategy, so the actual strategy that we're using, a story to support that strategy, actions, these are the tactics. This is what they do, right? So strategy, story, and then what the fuck do you actually do? And then I have an example of what doing that looks like. This is typically, sometimes it's a story if I have a perfect story that follows it, or I'll give an example. And this is usually when I reference Sarah in my content. And I have Sarah doing this at the perfect version possible, right? And then common mistakes that people make in this. And then I mark this in our playbook here as optional for people. This depends on how you like to roll. I always like to hit a sustainability angle. How is this sustainable? Because one of the big pillars of my brand and one of my big beliefs for anybody that we work with is I'm not trying to build just what you've seen these characters that I've worked for do, because that's not sustainable for 99% of you. 1% of you that we work with, 1%, it is, and they can hit it. But the majority cannot. And so how do you take what I'm sharing and do a sustainable? So this is where like I'll say things like, I mentioned here that the best practice is a weekly upload on YouTube. But look at my channel. I only do once a month. So if I say I want you to upload this weekly, Ben, and you go, ooh, well, okay, what about biweekly? You're still monthly? A little bit better. Quarterly? Oh, easy. Then start with quarterly. And that's where I give examples of how you can do this for yourself. Again, knowing that content doesn't take into the nuance of the individual, I try to lay out a couple of different nuance scenarios in this section. And that's really how we structure it, is following that. We'll move those around depending on the subject matter, how we're deciding to shoot it, whatever. Sometimes we'll omit some things, but that's the general framework that the YouTube, like the How to Build a Personal Brand course, the How to Lead a Media Team, and the Best Brand Strategies by Audience Size, all three of those videos follow that framework.
Love that. Yeah, structure, frameworks, constraints, they lead to better creative outcomes. Although it sounds like a contradiction, I've found consistently that they do lead to better outcomes, especially when you're obsessing over the viewer the whole time. So thanks for sharing all that. Hopefully, if you were listening, you wrote that all down and build it in a way that makes sense for you. We touched on this
Yes.
very briefly earlier about how you outlined that YouTube was your pillar platform for a short period of time. Like, you're like, this is our core focus. I'm a
Yep.
massive believer, and maybe this is kind of counter Gary Vee advice. Gary Vee is always like, be everywhere, be everywhere, be everywhere, which I can understand. But Gary Vee also has a big media team. He has killers like Caleb working for him, right? So like, If you're a solo person, I personally think, yeah, of course, be everywhere, but have a primary focus. How does someone pick the primary platform for them?
I don't want to speak for him, but one thing that I will comment on is Gary knows that nobody's going to do exactly what he says. They're probably at most going to do 10% of what he says. So he's saying the extreme to get you to post on one fucking platform once a day, right?
Got it.
Not, but I genuinely, I do believe that. I think he knows that 99% of people running a business can't post
Can't
8 times a day on all the
totally
different,
makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah, it makes
Yeah.
complete
So
sense.
I think he's saying it for that reason. And I wouldn't have articulated that 10 months ago before I started making content. But now that I'm making content and seeing how people actually respond to it, I'm like, oh, okay, this is how it works. They at most will act on 10%. So that's one part. But yeah, I think I'm going to share a couple of things here. One, I think that if you try to be everywhere all at once, you will be nowhere all at once because you won't probably make shit that is actually interesting and useful for the audience on any of these platforms. That's why I like one. I'm a Lord of the Rings nerd, so the analogy I use is the Eye of Sauron approach, right? I believe that you want to focus on one thing at a time. You can have other platforms in what I call maintenance mode. That means that you're posting, like, if you're doing YouTube and you're clipping shorts from it, cool, post them all over there. You're not allocating any resources, time, money, attention for innovation. They're maintenance. All innovations occurring on this platform. And I just find that this is a better way to do it. Now, you don't want to be beholden to one platform for long because, as we all know, these platforms are volatile, right? Like, uh, everyone was like super down to be on TikTok only until all of a sudden TikTok got shut down for a second. And then they're like, holy fuck, my entire business is built off of this. I'm screwed. I didn't diversify. Diversification is important, but I think people try to jump to that too early. It's kind of like the whole 7 streams of income thing. Every millionaire has 7 streams of income. And it's like, yeah, once they hit $1 million, but
Mhm.
to get to millionaire status, the majority did not have 7 streams of income. They weren't diversifying. They did one thing really well. So that same principle applies here, in my opinion. So that's what we did, and I'm going to share a failure that I had on this. I mean, it's not some big deal. I made it sound like it's crazy, but it's a little bit of an L and a learning moment for me, which is we identified YouTube as the most important platform that we were going to emphasize and that we were going to put a lot of effort into and prioritize. So in the beginning, it was like, if we make an Instagram post or a LinkedIn post, it's to promote the YouTube video. That's really it. If we get an idea here and there and Trevor's got bandwidth for it, cool. But again, Trevor was learning YouTube still. So like I know that the amount of time that he's gonna have for other shit is low because a YouTube edit when you're learning it is gonna take longer than it does for him now, right? So where was I? Oh, doing that, we were putting all of our efforts to YouTube. And after about 4 videos, maybe 5, I got cocky. And I was like, this is going way better than I expected. We've got YouTube down. Let's move the eye over to Instagram and LinkedIn, right? So Instagram was next. And we started doing that. And in August, we sat down to film a YouTube video that I had thought that I was good enough to just kind of riff off the dome. I got cocky, which is unusual for me. It's not a normal, my struggles are usually in the opposite. And I came into this film session with very little prep and I was like, yeah, we're going to fucking murder this. This is me talking about something that I like. I'm one of the only people in the marketplace talking about, which is film environment. How to make the film environment better for the talent that you work with using snacks, drinks, lighting, location, all these things that nobody talks about to get better
No.
content. And I was like, I've been preaching this for fucking ever. This is my differentiating factor. I'm going to rip. And we sat down, and within 15 minutes, I was like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. I massively fucked this one up. I underprepared. I got cocky. I thought we could switch over to Instagram too soon. And it was a shit video that we didn't end up filming. We actually ended up filming a video where I talked for like 2.5 minutes about, I apologize to the audience. And I say the best thing that you can do to get people to watch your future content is make the one that they're watching right now really valuable. And the way you make it really valuable is you respect the audience's time by optimizing for value per minute. And the video that we were about to film would not have had a high value per minute, and I would have been jamming it down your throat just to check the box of uploading a video in August. And that was a huge wake up call for me. It was like, oh, wow, I did the thing that I get frustrated with our clients for doing, which is they have a couple videos that go well, and then they outsource it to their team. They're like, I'll just show up, they'll ask me the questions, and it'll go great. It did not. And so we realized, okay, cool, we dropped the ball on that. We need to bring our eye back. And so right now, still now, YouTube is our number one focus, and that's where we're putting our attention. We had a moment where uh, a couple of videos were a little bit quicker on the edit, so then Trevor had more time to cut clips for Instagram. Here's another mistake that I'm going to share. We had this abundance of Instagram content all of a sudden, like so much. And I see it, I'm like, oh shit, okay, let's up our volume. Well, why are we only posting, once every once in a while? Let's do 2 or 3 posts a week on Instagram. And I know this. You know exactly where I'm going, I'm sure, which is that I didn't have enough to do that for a long period of time. And the next YouTube video that we were going to do was one that was going to be over 3 hours on YouTube, which is a huge effort in
Massive.
pre-production and post, right? And so then we didn't have time to make the content for Instagram. So we had a couple weeks where we were posting 3 times a week, and then we had a month where we posted like nothing. And I used to be of the belief that like nobody gives a shit, nobody's paying attention. I got a lot of DMs from people being like, "Hey, why are you not posting on Instagram? Is this not a platform I should care about anymore? Like, what does this mean or whatever?" And it was very interesting to me. And so these are 2 examples where I think I got excited and overzealous and didn't take the sustainability frame of how do we keep this going for a long time. I'm going to get more results going a year straight of posting once a week on Instagram than a month where I post 3 times a week on Instagram. I will get more. No matter, I'll fight anybody on that. I will get more out of that. More in every single way. More on learnings, more on skill development, more on leads, more on trust with my audience, all of these different factors. And so I think it was a very interesting thing. But all that to say, yes, I believe in focusing on one platform at a time and knowing that as long as AI doesn't, become robots and kill us all tomorrow, life in theory is long and we can add these things in over time. And so like we will start getting a little bit more wild with Instagram, probably like mid Q1 or Q2 next year. And the way that we're going to do that is we will hire somebody to be able to do that, to either relieve what Trevor is currently working on so he can focus on that, or to take that initiative on. Because that is a bottleneck that we have spotted. And the only reason why you hire people is to eliminate bottlenecks and solve problems.
Completely. How did you determine, though, that YouTube was the primary focus?
Great question. Incredible question. I had the leg up of being behind the scenes and building some brands for other people that were in the B2B space making educational content. And I just saw the highest quality lead came through YouTube. Now, shockingly, and this is interesting. In the orgs that I've been in-house in the past, by volume, Instagram was number 2. By percentage of audience, LinkedIn was number 1, actually. Just not as much volume. So percentage of audience, like almost always, if you're in the business or educational space, B2B, LinkedIn by percentage of audience will give you the most. But your audience is typically, for most people, a lot smaller on LinkedIn. There's some people listening that are, they got like 150,000 followers on LinkedIn and 5 on every other platform.
Got it.
Awesome. That's definitely your number 1. But that's where it's interesting. So I went into this thinking it was going to be YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram. But for me, I found that actually Instagram is number 2, LinkedIn's number 3, not just by percentage, but also by absolute. But YouTube, I had seen in the past that it had been the most effective. I also had this desire to make absurdly long, in-depth content. And so the debate was basically, do we do YouTube video or audio-only podcast as our platform? And so the next question was, I'm comfy, relatively, on camera doing video. What are we going to get the most out of? Video.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's why I pivoted my agency that was first Instagram and all social media in general to being strictly YouTube, was the exact same thing. And I also think that once you do crack the YouTube ideation thing and the packaging thing, there's not a lot of people who will put in the effort to get there. Like, because it is a lot of frustration, and there's also so much that can go wrong, and you can waste a lot of effort. And I think that's usually what deters people from figuring that thing out, because they can spend like tens or dozens of hours on a video. And if they don't crack that tiny little piece, no one sees it, which really pushes people away. It motivated me. And really, actually, that's why I was so attracted to it. But it's all about figuring out what makes sense for you. I personally think there's actually going to be new platforms that come up over the next few years, especially as AI becomes more of a thing.
Oh yeah.
If Caleb, if you could design your own social media platform, what would it be? Like, what would be the core features of differentiation? Describe your social platform.
I think I would. I have not really thought about this ever,
Yeah,
actually,
it's
to
a
be
hard
honest with
question.
you.
I
But
know.
immediately off top, I think I would make a prerequisite for you need to engage a certain amount for every time that you post. So, like, I would make it an engagement bias platform. So, like, if you're going to upload a minute of content, you need to have placed like 5 comments or something like that. Like, I think there would be something to that. Um, because basically, what I'd be wanting to do is create something that was really high quality audience. Right now, something that I think is interesting is the quality of audience I'm noticing on some of these platforms is like, depending on your niche, wildly low.
Incredibly so.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Now,
Right.
shockingly, one little thing I'll throw out there, I always thought that TikTok was really low for my world. And there's a creator by the name of, fuck, I hope I get his last name right. Brian Cochran, I think is it. Oh man, I'm so sorry if I fucked that up, my dude. Brian C, I believe is his name. I saw him on TikTok making these like 10-minute long videos where it's his cell phone and he's just talking to the camera about brand strategy and content strategy. And the reason why I saw him is he tagged me and he was talking about something that I shared in the course or whatever. And it broke my belief. I was like, oh shit, he has a really strong audience and really good engagement around this subject matter on TikTok. I realized that in previous organizations, when I was in house and we would try to attack TikTok, we tried to attack it thinking that we needed to operate. This is a very interesting thing, actually. We looked at what the best practices were across different niches, and we were trying to make what everyone calls TikTok-esque content, right? Like have visual like hooks and props and things like that. Like we tried to lean into that really hardcore. And actually, what was really interesting is Brian did a really good job. And I know there's other creators that have done this, so I'm sure he observed it or whatever. But he did a good job of noticing that everybody was playing that game, and the thing that was missing was just raw dialogue and just talking to the camera. Right? We saw this happen on YouTube years ago, where all of a sudden all these like just vlogs, but it's just literally like a video in one location, minimal cuts, somebody just venting to the camera had its moment in time. And that is happening, I believe, or has been happening for a while now on TikTok. So I started doing that and finding that that was super effective. I'm actually getting a lot of interesting reach via that. But anyways, uh, the thing about AI, yeah, I I view it as something where I would want the audience to have a higher quality of engagement and buy-in almost to the platform. Don't know how you would measure it. There would be bots that would just automate your 5 comments a day so that you could post or something like that. But I think something like that, like I think Be Real was interesting. I
Yes.
thought it obviously failed, but like it was a very interesting thing of like one post a day. So there's something about that I
Scarcity.
think, yeah, yeah, like basically how do you make this more valuable? Um, but I am not an app developer, so
Yeah.
clearly a terrible idea, probably.
No, no, not I wouldn't say that at all. The other line of my business, because we previously helped software companies a lot and we saw how much money we were making them, so we started building our own software products. And so I've actually been chewing on this in particular. So I was also doing this for market research with you because like who better to talk to? And I was sitting at a very similar place where I think blockchain will play a big role in this. I think proof of human will be a big thing where you'll have to validate that you are a human. And there's
Yes.
one person who's really cool who talks about this very often is someone that I'm a big fan of is Charles Hoskinson. He's the founder of Cardano. It's like one of the biggest crypto blockchain
Yep.
projects, whatever. But he talked about this at length. I think it's like a second or third most recent video. I think you'd actually really like it. If you can fit it in your consumption schedule, I definitely would take a look. I'll send it to you after this call. But
Please.
basically,
Yeah.
he described the next wave of the internet, where essentially, as you're referring to, the bots will live on the current internet, and there'll be a new one where we actually hang out, but you have to prove who you are to get in.
I love that so much.
Yeah,
I
and I
It's almost like, it's like taking the exclusive members club model.
yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. I
Yeah,
love
and
it.
so he said he might build it, so I'm hopefully you and I can help him build that from a creator's first perspective, like, that'd be so cool, but,
That's amazing.
yeah, man, so I'll send that the link over to you after, but
Please.
I know we talked a lot about how we don't talk about tactics, but I also
Do it.
wanna yeah, okay, are there any current tactics that you advise people do right now and take advantage of?
Yeah, so one that went, like, wildly crazy for me, relative for me,
Yes.
on Instagram was me talking about trial reels, like, 4 months ago,
Yes, I
and
saw
at the
that.
time okay, yeah, uh, crazy little flex, Adam Mosseri reposted that shit, like, that was
Let's
fucking crazy.
go,
I'm
Maseri,
pretty
let's
sure yeah, kinda great, but also I'm about to say something really awful. I actually don't think that I was any part of this, but it wasn't long after he reposted it that they throttled trial reels and
no.
changed it. And basically, what I was articulating 4 months ago, 5 months ago, whatever it was now, is at the time trial reels was like free paid. It was wild. Like I, the strategy that I got actually from somebody who talks about going viral a lot, and I think she does an incredible job with it. Adley Kingsman, she had mentioned this. I heard her talking about how she was using trial reels, which was not to test concepts, but to acquire new audience. She was taking all of her top performing reels and every day would repost them on trial
Right.
reels and would just gobble in new audience. So, like, I tested this at a low volume for myself. We posted a video where I walked through my brand journey framework, and it, without doing trial reels organically, and again, for me, this is a lot, it got like 111,000 views or whatever. That murdered for me. So then we reposted it, and it got like 30,000 views via the trial reels version, and just so on and so forth. They've changed it now. There's like 5 a day that you can do or something like that. And so I actually view it completely different. I used to view it as acquiring new audience. I now view it as a testing platform. But I don't think that it's necessarily as interesting to just test hooks. That's what a lot of people use it for. They'll try, they have the same core video, but they'll try 3 or 5 different hooks and see which one wins. Whatever one wins, they put public. That's great. Mazel tov. Here's the thing that a lot of people struggle with on Instagram specifically. They've built an audience around a format or topic, and they are terrified to deviate because that is what their audience prefers. And anytime that they do try to deviate, they are dinged for it. Trial Reels is your playground to test new formats and topics and see how they resonate with a cold audience, and then release it to your warm audience, the people that follow you. And this is a much better and safer way, safer for our egos, just to be very clear. But I got one. I'm right there with y'all. It's a safer way for us to test new shit that we haven't done before. I use what I call the 70-20-10 framework for content creation. 70% of what you make should be shit that you know is going to work based on previous data to support that. 20% of the content you should make should be slight tweaks and iteration to that 70%. The shit that you know is working, you're doing fine little tunes to it. The remaining 10%, wild different concepts that you've never done before, new formats, new topics, new ways of presenting it, whatever. And I believe that 10% is a great way to use trial reels. So
Love
that's
that.
one of them. Another one that I'll share with you that I think is interesting, and I'm early on, so I'm not going to be as aggressive on this. This is me sharing this in real time of us testing this. So everybody needs to test it for themselves, not apply it thinking, oh my God, Caleb said it, so it's going to work. I don't know about you, Ben, but I fucking hate vertical video on LinkedIn. I think it's gross. I really don't like
Yeah,
it.
it's usually pretty cringe, it's not very good.
Yeah, like it's just, and not even like, because a lot of people are just re-uploading what they upload. It's just
It feels
the
weird.
the UI. Yeah, like
Yeah,
I've never found myself like scrolling through that
it's
tab on my
it's
phone.
clunky.
Yeah, and on the web browser, it looks weird and everything. But what I have found for myself and a couple clients that has worked so far is horizontal video.
Mm.
Wildly effective.
What kinda
And
length?
so what we've tested is we've tested 2 to 5 minute long clips and 10 to 15-minute long clips.
Okay.
I haven't noticed any significant, we haven't done enough volume to really speak to this. But so far, I haven't noticed any real significant data to prove one is more valuable than the other. I believe that it's going to be like every other platform, which it doesn't matter how long it is. It just matters how useful and how much value per minute you're delivering. If it's a high VPN, sick. You can go for fucking 6 hours and 22 minutes if you want. If it's a low value per minute, you can't even fucking go 30 seconds, right? So I think it's less about the duration and more about what you're providing. But I do believe I'm just seeing, and I don't know why, but my hypothesis is that one, it's unique. A lot of people upload vertical video, so I think this is interesting. I think it allows you to see just very granular. You see the first comment and the hook of the copy all in one swipe rather than just this
Got
like
it.
obnoxious video. Um, and I think the way, and this is again just completely out of Caleb's ass, just to make sure this is super clear. No data to support this. I think LinkedIn did a terrible job rolling out the vertical video tab and just the whole thing in general. And so I don't think they did a good job of easing us into it. And I think a lot of people just don't like it. And so more often than not, not always, because I've seen videos do well vertically. Like there's ones that crush for sure. But a lot of times I think people just immediately swipe past it and don't consume it. Why? There's a million different reasons potentially, but that's something that I've noticed. Let's see what oh. Um 99% of people listening or watching are doing a terrible job of lead magnets. You make something that's dog shit and not valuable, and so you wonder why people don't download it. If you make a really valuable lead magnet, however, I am finding that it is insanely useful. So useful that people are taking mine, rebranding it, and selling it. Like,
Really?
which I'm fine with. Yeah, I'm fine with. I could give a fuck about. Like, if I worried about that shit, I'd have way too much anxiety and stress. But yeah, like I find putting in real effort, and this is obvious, but nobody does it. Like a single page checklist, or like that's not
It's
useful for
bullshit.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it and the example I like to use is like if you've ever been into a Costco, if you go up and try a sample and it's like cold or doesn't taste good, do you want to buy the 132 pack? No.
No.
But if it is really good and tasty, yes, you do want to buy it. The lead magnet is the same way. It's obvious, but it bears repeating because all of you are fucking it up.
Totally, it bears repeating because it's such a high leverage endeavor, and you're dealing with a high leverage space like social media. The things that don't scale can really scale, right? Like doing something for free because it is a high leverage vehicle in the fact that it can be mass produced from doing it once, and so doing it right once is the only way to do it. Period. So I love that. Those were awesome tactics. So definitely, if you guys. Another thing you said, Caleb, that's really important is the experimentation piece. That should carry over to content formats. That should experiment to platforms. That should experiment to different ways of posting. That's really how you're going to find these early opportunities. And social moves so fast. If you find it, squeeze it if it's there, because
Yeah.
like you saw with the trial reels, it can go away.
Yeah. The other one that I would say too, actually, I'll throw this one out there. This is like kind of random, but the tactic that I would implore people to do, if you are starting from zero making video content or any kind of content, experiment with different formats and experiment with them for the perspective of not what's going to hit the most with your audience, but what one are you going to enjoy the most
Love
right
that.
now, and probably for the next 6 months still, we're experimenting. Like I'm doing a lot of different styles and formats for a lot of reasons. One, because I'm trying to see, what do I enjoy the most? What resonates with the audience? And then for me, given what I'm talking about, I'm also trying to do it to show people there's a lot of different ways to successfully make content. In one video, I'm sitting down for 6 hours and 22 minutes in front of you, just in a chair. In another, I'm walking around London for an entire day talking about how you can advance in your career as a creative, right? Wildly different. Um, I would experiment with that. If you are already making content and you've been doing it for a while, I would experiment with new formats. Here's why. One, typically formats burn out for your audience eventually. The YouTubers that stick with the same format forever are the ones that I heard of and I admired back in 2012, but the majority of people listening to this have never heard their name, right? Like I loved Mr. Ben Brown, iJustine, I loved all those characters. A lot of people that are making content today have no idea who those two characters are that I just mentioned, right? They were early day vloggers that, well, iJustine actually did do a pretty good job of pivoting and stuff like that. But Mr. Ben Brown, I love him to death. He didn't evolve as quickly as he needed to stay relevant on the platform. So you need to be testing not only for your longevity's sake, but also knowing that one day the shit you're doing right now is no longer going to work. And if you didn't invest the time and effort right now figuring out what the next thing is, when you need to, it'll be too late.
Completely. Yeah, it's the like it's necessity really to experiment all the time, even for your own sanity. And one point that you've mentioned so many times is the sustainability of your own output, right? And if you hate what you're doing, I've lived through this where I've even had something that's working for me or a client, and if you don't enjoy it or if you hate it especially, it won't last for long, and eventually it'll actually leave a bad taste in people's mouths too, because it's an energy transfer when you're watching someone on this medium. Like, you do feel, especially if you spend enough time, and people leave feeling icky. If they know you don't like it, you're gonna come across like that, and it's just not fun for anyone.
Could not agree more.
So, Caleb, let's say people watch this. I like to give clear, actionable call to actions. Where is the next place they should go to get more of you? If they had one place they should go.
Watch the free 6 hour and 22-minute course on YouTube or listen to it. I made it so that you could watch it or listen to it. It is How to Build Your Personal Brand on my YouTube channel. If you just search my name, I would do that. And if you want to not waste your time and just watch me, but actually take action on it, then go download the workbook. I'm not saying that to get your emails. I'm saying it because I want people to actually take action on it.
100%. So that'll be linked in wherever you're consuming this, in the description or the show notes and the pinned comment. So go over to Caleb's channel, actually put the time in. If you're serious about this, you got to put in serious effort behind it. And Caleb's giving you resources to make it as simple as possible, because the hardest part is that 0 to 1. And with stuff like this, it's a lot easier to get over that fear and that initial, like, what do I do here? So definitely go take advantage of that. The fact that this shit is free, like, when I was starting out, I would have begged for that course that you put out on the internet for free, right? So if you're listening to this, watching this, go watch Caleb's free course. You will not regret it.
Thank you, Ben. I
Of course,
appreciate
man.
it, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, and I hope to have you on again soon.
Absolutely. Thank
Cheers,
you all.
mate. Thank you.